Hello and welcome to our Beginners Academy meeting. We have presentations that would be of interest to beginners and returning hams. And tonight's presentation is a beginner's guide for parks on the air, also known as POTA activations. All right. Well, the Parks on the Air program is, in my opinion, is well managed and popular. Uh, the concept was started by Jason Johnson, W3AAX. Um, uh, the ARRL had a National Parks on the Air in 2016, and it was wildly popular. And the participants were disappointed when it ended, and the Parks on the Air picked up at that point, and it has become wildly popular. Their website is parksontheair.com, and they have another web page. It's POTA.us, and that's where the spots show up. There's also a Facebook site that I haven't visited. So Parks on the Air applies to national parks, state parks, and various wilderness areas. And it applies to the United States, Canada, but many other countries. So it's growing, and it's worldwide, the same program. In Parks on the Air, there are activators that go to the parks or sites, set up and operate. And then there are hunters around the world that would like to get credit for working an activator. So it's one of those cooperative things. All bands and modes are applicable except repeaters. You can do satellites. You can operate anytime the park or campsite is open. There are many awards for both activators and hunters. And it's an opportunity to have a picnic, take the family, and it fits in well with camping, like overnight camping. Here's a ham outdoors and operating his radio, and he is an activator, and he's probably making lots of contacts. And in regard to activators, so many hams have challenges operating at home with HOAs and small lots, or maybe they're in an apartment or condo, but activators don't have any worries about HOAs. They've got the great outdoors. And activators need 10 QSOs for a successful activation of a park. Parks can be very scenic. You can operate out of a vehicle if you prefer. Maybe the weather is rough or too cold or too wet. You can just operate out of your vehicle from the parking lot. And if you spot yourself on the POTA site, they will come, and we'll talk more about that later in this presentation. There's a calendar where you can advertise when you'll be doing POTA activations. The activators keep the log, but hunters don't. And to get credit, activators submit the log via the POTA website. The hunters have it easy because they don't have to do any logging. And if you've ever worked a station on Parks on the Air who is activating, you've gotten credit for it. You just need to register on POTA to see the POTA website to see your stats. On that page I mentioned, they have spots. So you can filter the spots by band and so forth and mode and see who's activating at any time. And activators can hunt other parks, or other parks can hunt activators. And when they work each other, it's called park to park, and everybody gets a kick out of park to park contacts. And there are awards for park to park. So I've boiled it down to 10 steps for Parks on the Air activations. Number 1 is gather your ham radio gear. Number 2 is choose a POTA reference. Their term for a site is reference, and it may be a park, it may be some other government site, but they have reference numbers for everything that they give credit for. So after you've picked out a reference, I'll just call it a park. You find your area at the park to operate, set up your rig and your antenna, and you can optionally spot yourself on the POTA page. Then you would call CQ or do what is called search and pounce. Number 7, log your contacts. Number 8 is have fun. And number 9 is submit your log. And most people wait till they get home to do that. And number 10 is do it again and again. Just one moment. Okay. Number 1, gather your radio gear, likely a battery too. All right. Well, you know, probably the best idea is to start with what you have. And for example, if you have a 100-watt rig like a ICOM 7300, a ICOM 9100, or a Yaesu 991, or similar radios, you can take those to the field if you desire. So you don't have to go out and buy a radio just to do Parks on the Air. Or you can use the more compact rigs like, I think it's a Xiegu G90 or the ICOM 705 or the Elecraft KX2 or KX3. And there's more and more compact rigs coming out, in particular from China and other parts of the world. The battery, whatever battery you have, if you have one for your boat, you could use it. So if you have an AGM or lead acid battery, you can use it. So my point is, don't go spend some money until you've had some fun, and then you can decide if you want to optimize your equipment. As far as batteries, the lithium iron phosphate is very popular. It's very lightweight. It's half the weight of a lead acid battery, and it has very good characteristics. I have a number of those batteries from a company called BioEnno, but hams are finding some alternative sources that are a little less expensive. But generally, lithium iron phosphate is almost a perfect battery except for the cost. And just in general, a general idea, for a 100-watt rig, you might want to use a 20 amp hour battery. Doesn't have to be exactly. Well, now what I mean is 20 amp hours. And then obviously, if you're running less power, and most of these smaller radios run 20 watts or less, you could get by with a 3 amp hour to 10 amp hour. Of course, it depends on the particular radios that you have. All right. Well, really, the point of this picture is not so much the equipment, but the scenery. This is at Frank Jackson State Park, and I like to go camping there. And it just has a beautiful, beautiful view of the lake and the island that's in the lake. But this is probably more equipment than what you would need to do parks on the air. But I actually have a ICOM 705, and I have the option and amplifier there, so I can run 100 watts. The amplifier is by Elecraft. I've got a huge 40 amp hour battery in the orange box. And then I have a Toughbook laptop. But I would say, and I brought my own table, but um, um, you probably won't require an external amplifier. So, and you wouldn't necessarily need such a large battery. So, but it's the scenery I like in this one. I also have a ICOM 9100 and a Go box, and I carry the battery and a tuner and so forth in a toolbox. And I've gotten a lot of use out of that radio. All right. Well, what hams love is to experiment with antennas, and there's so many antennas, and so they're all candidates to use at a park. You should consider that you're among other park goers. So you want to keep your profile kind of low. You need to be concerned about tripping somebody, but generally that's not a problem. But you want to consider that. I know when I first started POTA, I used a 20-meter dipole with a rope pulling the center over a low limb. And actually, that would be a fine parks on the air antenna. And the 20-meter dipole is only about 32 feet long, and you would pull the ends out. It would be an inverted V. So that's a very basic, inexpensive antenna that works. Likewise, verticals are popular. They're pretty, and mag loops have a smaller footprint at the park for the most part. My overall favorite is a Soda Beams band hopper link dipole, and I've got some pictures of that coming up. The end-fed half-wave antennas are popular. Also, you could use a random wire with maybe a 9-to-1 transformer. So the list could just go on and on about antennas to consider, but these are probably the top choices. Some parks don't like you using their trees for anything. And so for my operations, I try to make all my antennas self-supporting. And for that band hopper link dipole, I use a telescoping pole to hold up the center. If you had an end fed, you might use a telescoping pole to hold up the end. So, all right. This is it's an antenna you can buy. You could also make it, but those three winders, two of the winders have the two sides of the dipole. Then the other winder has thin coax RG171, and it packs up in that little blue bag, and it's very lightweight. So if I'm going to put it in a backpack or whatever, that works. Some of the other items aren't so lightweight, but in the back there's a telescoping pole and an angle iron, I call it, and a little hammer. So I'll show you how I use those. Over on the left, I've pounded the stake in and attached the telescoping pole to the stake with gear ties. And that's the first segment that's poking out there. Then I put that, stretch that antenna out and raise up the center, which is the pole, spread the ends out. Over on the right, I'm using it at a park campground, but it could be used just at a general park also. So it does work on 40, 30, and 20, and the band is determined by the little alligator clips or jumpers to switch in different lengths of the wire. And it's all pre-constructed to have a good SWR on the bands. All right, number two, choose a park or reference. In general, we mentioned national parks, state parks, and I call them wildlife areas. They may go by other names, but they are included. And but unfortunately, not all parks are on the POTA reference list. City parks, county parks, other types of parks aren't on the list. But nevertheless, there are many, many parks. I don't know, probably over 1,000 in the United States. I'm just guessing on that. The POTA site has a map of their references, which are sites or parks. I'll mention that generally you don't need permission to operate in a park. You don't need it. And I actually refrain from asking, because when you ask them, they're not prepared to make a decision. So if you just start operating, it all seems to go well. Now, it would be different if it was some kind of special site. There are a lot of historical sites that might be downtown or adjacent to a museum. And so if it's not a park, so to speak, I might ask and for permission and let them know what we're doing. Now, also I've mentioned wildlife areas. Those usually have trails through them, and they'll have a trailhead with a parking lot. So you could go down the trail or you could just operate from the parking lot. Um, I live in Alabama, in Dothan, Alabama, and Panama City. But in regards to Panama City, there are more than 20 sites or references within 70 miles. And as you can see, the parks in Florida and along the coast is just, every few miles. So it's a great opportunity. You're not going to go far if you're on the Gulf Coast. They're a little more sparse in Alabama, particularly around Dothan, but there's still some within 40 or 50 miles. So you picked a park. You don't have to, but you could do a little research, look at the map online to find where the picnic areas are. It never hurts to read the rules just so you won't get in trouble. And as I mentioned, you can operate from the parking lot, which is not so interesting, but some people just pull into a POTA site, either operate mobile or just set up their antenna on the edge of the parking lot and go to it. But it's a little more enjoyable, I think, to actually go find that picnic table. And the strange thing, most parks are just empty. If you're the if you go in at when they open at 8 o'clock, you've got the whole park to yourself in most cases. Uh, at parks, don't be surprised that as time goes on in the day that the kids are out playing and you just want to watch your equipment and antennas and wires just to make sure that nobody gets caught in them. And inevitably, a family reunion will show up and you might be in their spot. So you might have to move, but that's no big deal. And I found that park rangers and volunteers are very friendly and they like people to have creative uses of the park. So amateur radio is one of those, and I think Parks on the Air has been going on so long that it probably won't be their first time seeing somebody set up. And of course, other people in the park are going to ask you, what are you doing? So my best answer has been, I'm talking to aliens, and that usually works. But some of them are actually they're curious, and some of them may even be potential hams or actual hams. So all right. Well, let's say that you picked your park, you got to the park, you got set up. You have an option to quote self-spot on the POTA page. And of course, to do that, you need to have previously registered. I recommend that everybody register on the POTA site, even hunters. That way you can see your statistics. So log in. Now, this all assumes that you basically have internet available. And on the site, you click add spot and you can put in your information and all those hunters will know about it. If there is no internet and you make a contact, you can ask them. Most of the time, they're pretty savvy and they can they know what to do to spot you on POTA. So I have had situations where I don't have any internet. All right, this is a screenshot of the POTA spots page. And Um, it goes on, but it's showing some spots of a park in California, one in Texas, one in Ontario. So if you're hunting, you can see what frequency these people are on and work them. But the point of the slide is you can add your spot. There's an add spot button on the right, upper right, and it's also in the menus. Oops. And it's really simple. You'll get a little dialog box to put in your call sign and your frequency. It figures out your mode from your frequency and your park reference. And it will look up the park number and give you the park name. One of my worst case fears is that I'll do a whole activation with the wrong park number. So so it's nice to get a little confirmation that you know the number and it's the park you're in. All right. Well, so let's make some contacts. You have a choice. You can call CQ or do what is called search and pounce. And you're trying to get at least those 10 contacts. If you don't, it's okay. But you need 10 to actually activate. Single sideband CW and FT8 are, of course, very popular on HF. Most of the POTA work is on HF. I'm sure there's some 6 meters, and I've also made a few contacts on 2-meter FM. If I can get anybody to come back, you would need to do it on 2-meter simplex. So you can say CQ POTA, this is N4KGL on sideband or in CW. And if you haven't been spotted, it may take 10, 15 minutes for somebody to come across you, particularly if you're not all that strong, but they will. If you do spot yourself, as I say, they will come, at least a few, sometimes dozens, and in some cases up to 100 or more. So it's a little intimidating when they all show up, but don't worry about it. You can work through it. Um, in a pileup, you actually, when it's a huge pileup, they call you and you don't hear almost nothing, just a lot of mumbling, but on single sideband at least. But anyway, you're going to hear a partial call in there somewhere or the last letter and then say, well, the station ending in Mike, please come back, or the 8 call, the call with an 8, please come back. And so you can just ferret it out and work through the pileup, and eventually it will die out. However, search and pounce is the opposite. You're not calling CQ, and it's more low key activity. So you can tune across the band and work any station that will talk to you. And in reality, any contact you make counts, even if you never mentioned you were in a park. If you turn it in on the log, then it counts. But generally, unless you're doing some contest or QSO party, you would mention your park. And on weekends, you'll find lots of park activators calling CQ, and they will, if you say this is N4KGL park to park, then they'll take a break and say park to park, please come back. And then because there's actually extra credit for park to park. So, and both stations get that credit. Here's what the typical pileup looks like if should you get one. This was at St. Andrews State Park. So, well, to get credit, the activator needs to log their contacts. A paper log is perfectly fine. You need to get the date, time, band, mode, their call, and if they're park to park, their reference. Getting their state or country is suggested. You don't have to get that signal report, but usually signal ports are exchanged. And eventually you got two options. You can use some kind of log program to create an ADIF file. That's the format that log files get exchanged with. And or so you could use a paper log and then do something at home to turn it into an ADIF. Or you could use a laptop or phone and log in the field as you go. The HAMRS, HAMRS program is awesome for that purpose. Look that up. It's available for a lot of different platforms. This is what it would look like on my Android phone. And the top part is putting in the station you're working. If they happen to be at a park where they have more than one reference number, that comes up. You can put it in. Their park is comma separated parks. It will look up their information. When you put in the call sign, it will look up the park that they're at, and it will show you that. The stuff at the bottom is your information. You don't have to put the frequency in, and you don't have to do anything with the signal reports, but it's available there if you want to do it. All right, well, this is all about having fun, and POTA is one of the most popular and fun on-the-air activities, and hunters generally genuinely appreciate the activators, and a lot of them will give a thanks for activating. They appreciate that you took your time to go out and fight the bugs.
Oh, ready? Salad. Oh, not bad.
All right. So anyway, when you're activating, you are the DX and everybody wants to work you. But warning, activating parks can be habit forming. The sunshine and outdoors is good for us. You can experiment with different rigs and antennas. Maybe if you like, involve your family. And if you're camping out overnight for several days or whatever, you can get several activations on a trip. The last step is submitting your log. So that's where you generate that ADIF file, or maybe you already have it. And then you can upload that to the POTA site. And the POTA site, say you don't want to use your own program and mess with that, they have a capability to let you just manually type it in on the web page, and it it will it's just an alternative way. If you don't want to deal with your own software, you can just use their web page to put in your contacts. I've used something called fast log entry to convert a paper log to ADIF. It's not the only way, but you could look it up. This is a screenshot from the POTA website. It's the if you tap on your call sign, and you'll get a menu, and it has an option called My Log Uploads. You can drag and drop your ADIF file in the box. And in the middle of the page is that manual log entry option. Anyway, it will do a little checking on your log, process it, and generally, it's got it all processed and your records updated in a few minutes. But for the awards and things, it could be a few hours or a day even. But the POTA people have done a fantastic job with all this online infrastructure. You used to email your logs in, but now it's all self-service. So number 10, do it, activate, and do it again and again. There's so many POTA sites you're going to find in your area, and particularly Northwest Florida. And I won't go into details, but sometimes there's overlapping. There might be a trail that goes through a park, and if you're next to the trail and you're in the park, then you would have a twofer. So really, you get credit for 2 activations. And there are many awards that the POTA site will automatically award to you. You don't have to apply. This is just a list I made once upon a time about those parks that are near Panama City. They don't use KFF numbers anymore, so just forget the FF. It would be St. Andrews State Park would be K1917. The awards are too many to mention, but activators, the more reference areas you operate from, the higher your level. And then on the right, a few of my awards that I got a long time ago. A lot of them are hunting awards, and mainly it was still people I worked from a park, but I got credit as a hunter for working other parks. And they're very creative, and so you're just going to get bukus of awards. And hunters are getting credit for just working you, and they can register and log in on the website and find out what their awards are. So the takeaway here is POTA is fun. Okay, so get started. A lot of people intend to get started in Parks on the Air, activating, but this is the time to do it, because in the South here, we're getting a touch of the fall weather. It's cooler, and that's the time to be in the park before it gets really cold. And you can, if you're new and if you want to go along with another ham, you could activate a site together. Actually, a trick you can do is you can have one radio and two hams, and so it's two operators with two different call signs. So a station working you and your friend could get credit for two. It's just kind of a trick. It's another twofer situation. And if you just can't get outdoors, hunt parks, because activators love to hear from you. So at this point, I know I've kind of droned on and on. Are there any questions or comments about getting started doing park activations? We have a audience of beginners and mentors on Zoom here.
Yeah, this is Alan. I had a question. Is there any particular frequencies that are popular more than others?
No, I think there's general areas of I have to say no, because people just generally pick a clear frequency or try to find a clear frequency and then spot themselves there. So
20-meter phone is typically,
yeah,
I find, very popular above 14,300, above the Marine Mobile Service Network.
well, yeah,
pretty hot up there.
yeah. So there's no real answer, but because of nets and different things going on the bands, there seems to be some clusters of activity. I know I get like 14, 260. So
The
the
reason I was
answer,
asking,
yeah, go ahead,
the reason
Alan.
I was asking is just it's being a new ham and all, and I don't have all the equipment that I need for all the frequencies. So if I'm going to buy something, I didn't,
Yeah.
I'm going to buy whatever the popular frequencies are.
Well,
So I don't spend a lot of money. I mean, I like the idea of being able to put
yeah,
something up on the tree and hang it out, and
yeah.
that covers quite a bit of frequencies.
Well, I didn't mention this, but uh, there are two bands that are very popular. One is 20 meters, which is the 14 megahertz band. And another popular band is 40 meters. So 20 meters is usually your distant contacts, and 40 meters is closer in generally. And so chances are, if you have an HF radio, it's going to have both of those bands on there. So there's nothing exotic about the bands. Those are probably the most popular bands overall. But with the solar cycle being what it is, the higher bands like 17 meters, 15 meters, 10 meters are open most of the time. So, and I will mention that you can use the what they call the WARC bands. You can use like 17 meters or 30 meters, or they don't use the WARC bands for contests, but you can use them for parks on the air. So, well, that was a good question. And when we started, we were talking about particular spots in a band, and there's no like watering hole per se. And when you, if you spot yourself on the website, you're going to give them the frequency, so they'll know where to find you.
I would jump in, Greg, and
yes,
I worked some POTA as a hunter. I don't activate, but I found on CW working QRP that the activators who are working QRP CW often are above 60.060 on
right.
40 as well as 20. So that's a place to look for POTA operators on CW.
Yeah, I concur with that. And it's a popular place. I think originally it was popular for QRP and Summits on the Air. And now Parks on the Air has kind of adopted that. So on CW, there is a little bit of a watering hole.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right. So have you been shopping for an HF rig, Alan?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go with the 7300. It seems to be real popular
Yeah.
with everybody, and everybody seems to be happy with it, and it works real well.
Yeah.
Trying to find an antenna seems to be my problem. I mean, there's a lot of antennas out there that are for specific frequencies that are resonant, but to try to find something that equals all the bands on that particular radio, you're
Yeah.
kind of limited
Well,
to something from the 80 to 10 meter only, and then it's not resonant really all the way through.
right. Well, that's a good point. I talk about a dipole and you cut it for a specific band. So it doesn't solve all the world's problems, but frankly, if you just have a 20-meter antenna, you can do a whole lot of Parks on the Air. And 20 meters is open all day and into the evening. And Chris, you want to comment about the antenna that you use?
Yeah, I'm partial to vertical, although I use dipoles here in my
Yeah.
home QTH. Yeah, I got some slides of it was a radar thing, but it was also a park thing. Can I share a screen?
Yes.
And I think a lot of the guys have seen this already, so bear with me. For some of the new folks.
There we go.
Oh, what's happening? Oh, open twice. Anyhow, here we go. Yeah, so this is actually a park. So anything on mainland behind me is not a park, but anything on an island in Lake of the Woods is Park 1477. So that's kind of convenient as I'm sitting on an island right now. Although this is, because it's privately owned, it's not a park. But if I go 200 feet that way, I'm in a park on a neighboring island. Anyhow, so vertical antenna, I use a walking stick, and at the end of the walking stick is a little 3/8 by 24-inch adapter you get at a lot of the truck stops for $15 or $10 US. And it's got like a clamping system here that's quite well made. Stainless steel screws, anodized aluminum. Any major trucking gas station will have them. And then onto that, I've got the MFJ 1979. Now, Greg, you are talking on radargroups.io with Lucy, I think it is. And this is her favorite antenna as well as mine. And it's a telescoping whip. You can see the little sections there. So this thing will do by itself 20. And then if you bring the sections down, you can do 15, 10, or 6. Just by looking at your SWR meter as you're, well, not while you're transmitting, but you transmit, adjust it, transmit, adjust it. You don't want to burn yourself. Then counterpoise, and I think Lucy mentioned this as well, that an elevated radial, you don't need 100 of them. I find 2 of them work fine. So Greg mentioned the dipole is a 32-foot antenna. Well, a vertical going up 19 feet and then going with a counterpoise out 19 feet horizontal adds up close to or thereabouts of your 32 feet. So I do an alligator clip onto the bottom of the coax connector, and then I stretch it out and I keep it up off the ice. I think if you're only going with 2 radials, getting them up 2 or 3 feet makes a huge difference. And these are little driveway markers that Frank knows all about. He can get longer ones where he's at, but I managed to get 3-footers here. and a clothespin on the end of the fiberglass driveway marker attaches the counterpoise. So, and that's just speaker wire from Walmart. What that is, that's cheap like borscht. And then I like 100 watts. Greg and me differ in that opinion, but anyhow, this is an old Yaesu FT857. It's a nice radio. It does HF and VHF and UHF, so it's got all the stuff built in, but no pan adapter on the display. And there we go, doing radar and slash parks on the air. And there's a Timberwolf. Gotta watch those.
Chris,
What's that?
how do you go about tuning it? I mean, I know how you do it, but you can explain
Yeah.
to Alan?
Well, for 20 meters all the way up pretty well does it. And if it doesn't, I bring it down a few inches or thereabouts. But generally speaking, all the way up 20 meters is right on the money. For 15 meters, you just kind of take a portion thereof, just sort of eyeball it and hit your, go to AM if you want on your radio, or just hum into it and just hit it and look at your SWR. Adjust it one way, see if it gets worse or better. And it doesn't take more than a couple of ups and downs, and you pretty well got it right on the money. Now, your counterpoise should be adjusted as well. So I've got a couple of rolls of this speaker wire. Some are, 18 or 19 feet for 20 meters. And then I've got half that length for 10 meters, and then some in between for 15 and stuff like that. So it's pretty easy to play around with the counterpoise wire, but basically I pick a band and go with it. And I just use the SWR on the radio. Now, if you've got a nano VNA or one of those MFJ SWR meters, then that's all the better. You can dial it in really fast and not worry about getting RF burns in your hand by hitting transmit by mistake. Greg, what are your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, the most rigs do have SWR, not all of them. And when we're talking about SWR, generally these type of antennas, when they're resonant, they will have a low SWR, like 1.5 to 1 or something under 2 to 1. And the G90 radio I don't have, but it has a it's kind of like an analyzer. It can do a scan for SWR.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has a spectrum scan on it on the bottom. Can I add a little bit here? Can I share you something?
Yes, you can.
First of all, I have the 7300 here, and it's gonna go a box, and everything.
Oh, you're off your microphone there, Frank.
Yeah, your microphone is directional.
May not hear me, but I'm going to show you.
There we got it.
The radio. This right here.
Well, what Frank is showing us is his Go box with the ICOM 7300. And inside his box, he has a battery. So it's all gathered together there.
On top of here, I have a PL259. And I can screw a thing here put a whip up. And then I can, somewhere on the body, this is aluminum, I can attach my counterpoise to it. Now, the 7300 has a built-in antenna tuner. And if you use it on full power, 100 watts, you can only tune something 3 to 1. But if you go into emergency mode, it reduces the power to 50 watts. And the internal tuner can just tune about just about anything. So, so this radio would be pretty good if you want to just go out there and just take anything special. Basically, I got a telescoping whip that with an adapter that goes from PL259 to 3H24, and I screw on there, on a MFJ, whip. I forget what the number is, 1972. It's like 10-foot whip. And then I'll just take a long piece of wire and clip it somewhere to the metal case, and that'll give me the counterpoise. And if you're running it at 10 watts, it's not going to be any kind of a danger for you to be, have it that close. But if you don't want to do that, you can mount an antenna further away and screw it into that. And with this radio in emergency mode, it pretty much will tune anything you put on it. I mean, you want to get as close to a resident antenna as you can, but you can make it work with this radio, even without having an external tuner, if you put it in
Yeah.
emergency mode. But also other choices, and what you talked about the G90. Chris and I and many other guys have been playing around a lot with loop antennas, and you can go into like a solid loop antenna where it's copper and doesn't disassemble, or you can make one where the loop is just coax, and you could roll it all up and carry it in a case and put it back together. If I can share, I'll show you a picture of a G90 with a loop antenna.
You can share.
Okay, right here, you'll see a G90. This is Bill Holmes, my friend here, and that's a loop antenna I made for him. And that loop antenna will go from 40 meters up to 15 meters just by tuning the little capacitor here. And it works pretty well. This is rigid. You have to carry it around like that, but it's on a little tripod and everything, and you just set it up. And the G90, the G90 does have a tuner in there that will tune just about anything, but with the loop antenna, you don't need that. You put that on bypass and you tune it with this, and then it does have a built-in built-in SWR meter, and you tune it for the lowest signal. And then if you push a button called transmit and hold it in, a little spectroscope will come along and show you where the dip is at. So it works pretty good. And then what I did with this radio was I attached a aluminum case in the bottom, and I put a 10 amp hour battery, lithium iron battery underneath there. So it's a totally self-contained little unit. And there's room in front for you to put the microphone in there, and you close the lid and you just carry the radio. There you have the power pack and everything in one package.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my
Well,
put in.
thanks so much, Frank. We always want to plug the loops. I have a portable loop where the loop is coax, and frankly, it is a viable choice for doing parks on the air, and it's easy to change bands. It's basically a coax version of what Frank had there. And so that's another go-to antenna for me is a magnetic loop. I use one that's can be purchased. It's called the Alex loop.
If you care to build one, I don't know if you're in Panama City. Yeah, I'm down there. I'll be down there probably December 1st. And if you can get your hands on a capacitor, you come over and we can build you one for nothing. Just whatever.
Yeah. Well, antennas don't have to be, if you're willing to do some of the work and gather the materials, they don't have to be expensive. At this point, I want to thank everybody for their attention. As we talked about POTA and radar, and we had lots of good inputs from our Zoom audience here. So we'll be having more beginner videos in the future. All right, 73.